A tariff is a per-unit tax on imports, and like all taxes on goods, it's a distortionary tax that alters the prices in the market, and in our case here across markets. We'll illustrate here how prices within and across markets are affected by the imposition of a tariff, and we'll then show the welfare changes that accompany the tariff. We begin with the free trade equilibrium, the equilibrium that emerges when exporters and importers are free to buy low and sell high, and therefore equalize prices across the two markets. In our case, this results in a greater quantity supplied by Florida producers than demanded by Florida consumers, a quantity that's exported at the green price P star, to New York, where the quantity demanded by New York consumers is greater than the quantity supplied by New York producers at that price. When a tariff is imposed in New York, it's a tax that importers have to pay as they unload their goods in the New York market. This is an additional cost that they incur, and as a result, they will demand fewer goods in Florida as they look towards exporting to New York. Thus, the price in Florida will fall from the equilibrium price P star that existed in the free trade equilibrium. Fewer exports from Florida implies fewer imports to New York, and thus the price in New York will rise above what it was in the free trade equilibrium, above the price P star. At the new magenta prices, it will again have to be the case that the exports from Florida are equal to the imports to New York. The difference between the New York price and the Florida price must then be equal to exactly the per unit size of the tariff, T. Consumer surplus in Florida then increases from area A to area A plus B, and producer surplus in Florida decreases from the area B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G plus H to just the area C plus F plus G. Florida consumers therefore gain B, while Florida producers lose B plus D plus E plus H. In New York, where price increases, consumer surplus goes from the initial area above the green price, the area I plus J plus M plus N plus O plus P, to the smaller area above the higher magenta price, area I plus M. Consumers therefore lose J plus N plus O plus P. Producers, on the other hand, gain the area J as their producer surplus increases from K plus L to J plus K plus L. In Florida, consumers gained the area B, but producers lost the area B plus D plus E plus H, leaving us with a deadweight loss of D plus E plus H, a deadweight loss imposed on Florida by the imposition of a tariff in New York. In New York, on the other hand, producers gained the area J, but consumers lost the area J plus N plus O plus P, leaving us with a loss of O plus N plus P. But New York also gets to raise tax revenue, which is a gain to New York. The tax revenue is equal to the per unit tariff T times the number of units that are taxed, in other words, the number of imports. So it's the vertical blue distance times the horizontal magenta distance on the horizontal axis. This is equal to area N plus Q. So New York loses surplus of O plus N plus P, but gains tax revenue of N plus Q. The N's cancel, and it's ambiguous as to whether overall New York is gaining or losing from imposing the tariff. It's losing the triangles O and P, but gaining the rectangle Q. Now notice that area E is logically equal to area Q. In other words, the area Q that's creating the ambiguity as to whether New York overall benefits or loses from the imposition of the tariff is equal to part of the deadweight loss in Florida. What's happening here is that New York is able to export part of the burden of the tax to Florida, in essence making Florida pay for the area Q of the tax revenue raised for New York. When we calculate the overall welfare change across both Florida and New York, E is a loss in Florida and Q is a gain in New York, but since the two are equal, they cancel. And what we're left with is an overall deadweight loss of D plus H in Florida and O plus P in New York. While the imposition of tariffs therefore makes us worse off globally, it may make the country that imposes the tariffs better off if it can find a way to export a sufficient amount of the tax burden abroad. We'll see in graph 20.4 that the ability to shift the tariff burden abroad depends on relative elasticities, just as the ability to shift the tax burden within a market depends on relative elasticities. And this in turn will depend on how big a country is relative to the outside world.